Hey guys, Mel here. Welcome to Knit to Know, a series where I like to share some of my favorite techniques, tips, and tricks. Today I'll be discussing yarn substitutions. Now I have two things that I always consider when I'm going to make a yarn substitution, and these things may not be the only considerations you have to make. That's going to depend on your project or garment that you're going to be knitting up. But I do believe that by starting with these two things, you'll be heading off in the right direction to make an informed decision on what to choose. There are a lot of reasons why you might decide to make a yarn substitution. One of those being that you don't like the yarn that's listed in the pattern, you can't find the yarn, maybe you don't like any of the colors that are offered in that line of yarn. Whatever your reason is, it's perfectly acceptable to make a yarn substitution. In fact, it's actually kind of the fun of knitting. And remember guys, knitting is for fun. So you should never feel pressured to use the exact yarn listed in a pattern. So these two things I'm going to share are going to help you get on the right foot to making the appropriate yarn substitution to be able to replicate what the designer is showing in their photos. So the first item is fiber content. Now this may not be explicitly listed or noted in the pattern, but you can do a little Google search on the yarn and find its fiber content that way. Whether it's wool, alpaca, cotton, animal fiber, plant fiber, or synthetic, just know that each fiber has its own characteristics, which lends to its behavior. And that is going to affect how that garment interacts with your body. Some yarns have more structure. Some yarns have a lot more drape. Some are better for cold weather. Some are better for warmer weather. The designer has chosen that yarn for that garment, for a particular characteristic, most likely. So if you want to make a very similar behaving garment, then you want to stick to the same fiber content that's listed in the yarn for that pattern, or at least something that behaves in a very similar way. The second thing I like to look at is yarn density, and this should not be confused with yarn weight. Yarn weight generally refers to the categories such as lace, fingering, and worsted. Yarn density is actually a characteristic that applies to any yarn and is a characteristic that can help you further distinguish and compare yarns within the same category. So what does that actually mean? I've got a little example to help me further explain this. So I have two balls of yarn. These are both recommended to be knit up with 5mm needles, so they fall under the same yarn weight category. They're both 50-gram balls. I have here a ball of Noro Silk Yarn Solo and a ball of Drops Air. Now they're both 50-gram balls, however this Noro ball has 100 meters and this Drops Air has 150 meters. Now, if you were looking at these online, and this is information that you can just check online, you don't need to be physically holding the yarn to determine yarn density, but you might read that and think, hey, I get more yarn with Drops Air. Maybe I should just buy that one. Hold on a second. Why this Drops Air, has more yarn is because of the actual construction of this yarn. So the Noro yarn is a single ply, Drops Air is a blown yarn. So you can imagine a mesh open tube and fibers are actually blown into that. Because of the presence of a lot of air, that accounts for why this yarn is so much lighter. I guess, hence Drops Air. So what does that actually mean for a garment? It means you're going to end up with a much lighter sweater. For example, if you're making a sweater, the sweater made out of Drops Air is going to be a lot lighter. It's not going to hang on your body as much as a sweater made out of Noro yarn. So another way you can look at this, I have two swatches, one for each of those yarns, and both knit up on 5mm needles and roughly the same size swatches. So theoretically, there is about the same amount of yarn used to make the same size of fabric. However, this Noro swatch weighs 8 grams and this Drops Air swatch weighs only 4 grams. So you can knit up the exact same sweater, exact same number of stitches, but this Noro sweater is going to weigh a lot more, and you're going to feel that weight more than you would in this hypothetical sweater. So if that's what you're actually after, if you're looking to make a much lighter sweater or a heavier sweater, vice versa, then it's going to be totally fine to, use these for your yarn substitution. However, if you're looking to replicate the same kind of drape that's shown in the designer photos, then you want to choose something that has, similar or same density as the suggested yarn. So fiber content, yarn density, those are two things that I consider first, and I believe will get you headed off in the right direction when you're going to make a yarn substitution. And again, these may not be the only considerations you make, but start with these. So that is today's Knit to Know. Please hit like if this video was helpful for you. And until next time, guys, happy knitting. Bye.